Would you take this bet? A coin you are told is 60% heads. $25. 30 minutes. Flip as many times as you want. In 2016, 61 finance professionals said yes. But if you take it, how much do you bet on each flip? All in. $1? Somewhere in between? All in feels bold. On a single flip, it maximizes expected value. $1 feels safe. You cannot lose much. The middle feels vague. Neither reckless nor timid, but what number is it? This is the Kelly Criterion, the formula for how large a bet to place when you already have an edge. These weren't random people off the street. They were finance students and working investment professionals. People whose entire job is reasoning about risk for a living. With a known, guaranteed edge, the optimal play should have been obvious. Instead, nearly a third of them, about 18 out of 61, walked away with nothing. 18 of them went all in on a single flip. 2/3 bet on tails at some point, against a coin they were explicitly told favored heads, usually right after a losing streak, chasing losses the way a slot machine gambler chases a jackpot that isn't coming. Only 5 had ever even heard of Kelly, the name for the concept that was about to explain exactly what they should have done. So what should they have done? Let's set up the problem properly. Call P the probability of winning, 0.6, just like the real coin. Call F the fraction of your bankroll you bet each time. Win, and your bankroll multiplies by 1 plus F. Lose, and it multiplies by 1 minus F. This is exactly where the 18 all-in bettors went wrong. Set F equal to 1, and one single loss multiplies your bankroll by 0. Forever. It doesn't matter how favorable the odds are, or how many good bets come after. Once you're at 0, compounding has nothing left to compound. You might think, fine, just don't bet everything. Maximize your average outcome instead. Write the expected wealth after one bet. P times 1 plus F plus 1 minus P times 1 minus F. Expand and collect terms. The expression collapses to 1 plus 2P minus 1 times F. When P is bigger than 1/2, that coefficient is positive. So expected wealth rises with F, and the maximum sits at F equals 1. The careful answer and the reckless answer are the same formula. So the algebra is honest about its own conclusion. Maximize that linear function and you are forced to F equals 1. Expected value is an average across every possible outcome, weighted by probability. It has no concept of a path where you are already at 0. And every bet afterward multiplies nothing by nothing. The fix is to maximize the expected log of your bankroll instead. Why log? Wealth compounds multiplicatively. Logs turn products into sums. And the log of 0 is negative infinity. Ruin is not merely a bad outcome on a chart. It is infinitely bad. Write the growth rate explicitly. G of F equals P log of 1 plus F plus 1 minus P log of 1 minus F. That single function is what we are about to maximize. Differentiate G with respect to F. The derivative is P over 1 plus F minus 1 minus P over 1 minus F. Set the derivative equal to 0 and clear the fractions. The algebra collapses to F star equals 2P minus 1. Now use what those symbols mean. Your win probability sits above a fair coin. That excess is your edge. Twice the edge is the stake that sits at the peak of the growth curve. For this coin, that peak is 20% of bankroll each flip. Not a slogan, the geometry you just watched climb. Let's replay that experiment 3 ways on the same sequence of flips. All in like the 18 did, a timid 5%, and Kelly's 20%. This is the difference 20 minutes of correct math would have made for 61 real people. Here is the question almost no gambling explainer asks clearly. Why does maximizing expected value fail so badly? Not, it's risky, but why is it answering the wrong question entirely? Imagine 1,000 copies of you betting at once versus the one life you actually live, flip after flip. Those two averages can disagree. A physicist, Ole Peters, gave that mismatch a name, ergodicity. When the average across copies equals the average along one path through time. Expected value secretly assumes something strange, that you can average your outcome across 1,000 parallel versions of yourself, all betting at once, and take the average across all of them at a single instant. That is an ensemble average, but you do not get 1,000 parallel selves. You get one life, betting the same coin over and over, moving forward through time. That is a time average. For a multiplicative bet like this one, the ensemble average and the time average are not the same number, even though they describe the exact same game. This gap has a name: Jensen's inequality. The expected value of the log of your wealth is always less than or equal to the log of the expected value. Averaging first and taking the log second gives a different, too optimistic number than taking the log at each step and averaging that. Expected value betting is quietly solving the wrong side of that inequality. It gets more uncomfortable. Some economists now argue this same ensemble versus time gap helps explain real wealth inequality. That under pure multiplicative randomness, with identical rules for everyone and zero difference in skill, wealth can still concentrate over time simply because time-averaged outcomes diverge from the population average. Not everyone agrees this fully explains what we see in real economies. But the mechanism itself, the math you just watched, is not in serious dispute. Probability itself was born from interrupted bets. In 1654, Pascal and Fermat asked how to split a pot fairly when a game ends early, not by points already scored, but by counting the win paths that never got to play out. Huygens turned that fairness into expectation. Bernoulli later connected long-run frequency to probability. Still missing: how much to risk when you finally have an edge? In 1956 at Bell Labs, John Kelly answered that missing question, not as a gambling tip, but as a new interpretation of information rate. In the same building as Claude Shannon, betting on a coin and receiving a noisy signal over a wire turn out to be the same math once you look past the surface. Your edge, how much better than 50-50 your odds are, is a measure of how much true information you have about the outcome. In the same sense, an engineer measures how much a noisy signal actually tells you about the message that was sent. Kelly's formula is what you get when you ask, what is the optimal way to grow your resources using the information you actually have? And not one bit more? Bet more than your real information justifies, and you are not being brave. You are betting on information you do not possess. Consider an application outside the casino. A bacterial population faces two unpredictable environments. One favors a safe strategy, the other a risky boom strategy. Each generation, a fraction of the cells randomly commits to each strategy. A 2023 PNAS paper by de Groot and colleagues on microbial bet hedging shows why that mix matters for long-run growth. The same proportional logic Kelly wrote down for a gambler. No brain, no calculation, no Bell Labs. Generations of natural selection found the same optimum humans wrote down in 1956. The same optimum most trained finance professionals still cannot execute under pressure, even when you print the odds in bold. So if evolution can find this without thinking, why do trained humans fail at it live? Because Kelly assumes you know your real edge. And in markets that number is always a guess. Worked example. If you think P is 0.6, but it is really 0.55, full Kelly overbets and the growth curve collapses toward ruin. Estimation error is not a footnote. It is the practical danger. That is why almost every professional who uses this in practice bets a fraction of what the math allows. Often half. Quant trading firms that take favorable bets to profit use half Kelly to decide how large each position should be when their edge estimate is noisy. Full Kelly assumes you know the odds exactly. Real desks do not. So they cut the stake to survive model error, crowded trades, and days when the signal is wrong. The formula still gives the ceiling. Knowing you cannot fully trust your inputs, and knowing the average you are chasing might not be the average that matters, is what keeps you under it. Carry that into ordinary life. Size the risks you repeat as if tomorrow must still exist, not as if 1,000 imaginary copies of you can absorb the loss. If this changed how you think about risk, like, subscribe, and stay curious with Proof by Surprise.